Omani Varieties, a program that features Oman's story and the story of its people. Insight into the country's customs and tradition, a glimpse of history and heritage. It is Omani Varieties. This show is presented to you by Sweetsil Navarro and produced by Sultan Al-Isa.
Welcome to Omani Varieties. In our episode, we're going to talk about Aflaj in Oman. Aflaj in Oman refers to water that runs through a channel dug in the earth. The source of Aflaj water is groundwater found in the subsoil or valleys. The plural of the word Aflaj used in Oman is Aflaj, which is a comprehensive term used to denote a system of irrigation. The Aflaj is an original Omani irrigation system deep-rooted in the country's land and history. The Aflaj irrigation system relies on water stored underground. It is extracted in a simple manner and is then used in agriculture and all other essential uses. Our guest today is the director of Aflaj Researcher Unit and chair of the Oman National Committee for UNESCO Program for Memory of the World, none other than Dr. Abdullah Al-Ghafri. Welcome, Dr. Abdullah. It's a pleasure to have you on the program today, and I believe that you have this great interest in the history of the country, particularly in Aflaj.
Thank you for having me here with you in this program.
First of all, we know that Aflaj are water channels or the water irrigation system that started from a long time. But aside from that, what is Aflaj in your own term? What do you mean by Aflaj?
Yes, many people think Aflaj is a canal. In fact, you can define Aflaj depending on the purpose of your definition. You can see Aflaj as an irrigation system. So it's a water system. That's a system which provides water from its source for domestic and agricultural use. But also Aflaj, you can see it from cultural point of view, and it's part of our heritage in Oman, and you can see it also as an social system as well at the same time. So the components of a successful Aflaj system is human being, nature, and technology. So technology, human being, and nature working together, making the system what we call it Aflaj.
When was it discovered and how did it, begin in Oman?
In fact, there is no life without water. So probably, if we're talking about the Aflaj, the discovery of a water system that people depend on it can go more than 10,000 years ago. And probably the Aflaj, what we call it Iddi or Dawoodi, and that's the tunnels dug inside earth, probably goes back as far as 9,000 years ago, maybe 7,000 BC, for example, when the people discovered copper and then start to mine for copper. After that, then they can get tools to dig earth and make trenches and make tunnels after that.
Who brought this idea of Aflaj in Oman?
This is very complex, in fact, question. But think about people; they are here for thousands and thousands of years. So why not the people invented this system here in Oman? When they found the copper more than 9,000 years ago, for example, they get the tool, and they can make tools from metals, so they can dig. So they start mining, for example, for copper. So they know the technique of mining. Then in mining for copper, they can find water. And now from copper, they can make tools. So why not this idea in Oman? I'm talking about Oman, started here. But also, it may not harm to say that maybe other countries discovered the Aflaj in other way, in other time, probably. But at the same time, also, this system diffused. So I think human being always, when they think of a problem, they think in similar way to find water. So probably it started from somewhere here in the Omani Peninsula or the south of Arabia, and then diffused by time to different areas around the world, maybe.
So that was like a very long time. And what is the oldest Aflaj in the country? Where is it located?
I don't know myself where is the eldest one, but from discovery of the office of the personal advisor of His Majesty, they found Aflaj, which is older, maybe go back older than 10,000 years or 10,000 BC. That's mean more than 12,000 years ago.
So since the ancient time up to now, there are still Aflaj that are active and are still the main source of water in the Sultanate. How many Aflaj are used in the country at the present?
Yeah, according to the statistics by the Ministry of Regional Municipality and Water Resources, there are about 3,000 plus Aflaj still functioning, and more than, unfortunately, 1,000 Aflaj dried up and died.
I think our listeners might really like to know how you became so passionate about this thing and how you come up of having interest in this field.
From my childhood, I was playing on the village, and I'm still, until now, I can recall back my memory. In fact, my father is a farmer in the past, and myself, not only I swim in the village, I drink from the village, I play with the village, I also irrigate with the village water. I do all the process of agriculture when I was a child. And then after I joined my first degree in education, I was in agriculture myself. And then I did my master degree on Aflaj, and did my PhD also on Aflaj. And I feel that this Aflaj is so important for the country. Someone need to study it, and we need really put more effort to preserve these systems, preserve the culture of this system for our next generations. So now I think now it's now become its responsibility for me. It started before as a hobby, and because I like it, because I was born in a village and I will play with it. But now it's a responsibility must do.
We can really get a sense of what this Aflaj mean to the country. But to give them a fuller idea, can you tell us how do Aflaj work?
Yes, to understand the village system, we really need to put the other component of the village. But to make it simple, let's think about the village as a water supply. So the main function for the village as a water supply is to collect water from its source, from the ground, and convey this water to the places where people can use it. The water use in the village has many ways. It's used for agriculture, it's used also for domestic use. It's used for drinking, it's used for washing clothes, it's used for other industrial even purposes. In the past was even running some machines to grind wheat, for example. And even now, some places of Oman, in the mountain area especially, the canals of the village are used also for a passage for people. And in the past, Aflaj was just you can say like a logistic station, like the filling station now for fuels, because people are nomad or walk long distances by their feet or on a camel or an animal, and they need to stop someplace to rest and to get water and food for themselves and for their animals. This is where the filling station, yes.
So this method is just so natural, no use of machines and technologies?
Yes, so the drive for the water, in fact, in the village is gravity. You don't need any extra energy.
You're listening to Omani Varieties. There's more, so don't go away. Omani Varieties, a program that highlights some untold stories that may be handed down from generation to generation. New discoveries from the old days that may influence the way we live in the present day. Omani Varieties, on your nation station, Radio Sultanate of Oman. We're back on your nation station, Oman FM. You know, we just had a trip recently, and I've seen Aflaj by my own eyes, and I think it really runs from several kilometers, and I'm just really wondering, like, what is the source of Aflaj?
Yeah, depending on the type of village. So, because Aflaj are classified to three types.
We have three types of Aflaj. Can you tell us these three types?
Yes, so according to the source, so of the water, then the Falaj are named. For example, if the source is a natural spring, called in Arabic Ain, so we call this type Aini. So that is the source. Okay. And then if the source is the base flow of a wadi, I mean, just like a small river upstream of a wadi, we call it Ghaili, because that is in Arabic Ghail. That's the water we see flowing in wadis or dry rivers, so that is Ghail. So we call this type is Ghaili. And if the source is a tunnel constructed by human being underground to reach the groundwater, we call it Iddi, because that is Idd. And also is called known as Dawoodi. So that is Iddi or Dawoodi. So these are the three types of Aflaj classified according to the source of water.
So according to the source of water, we have three types. And are these Aflaj are based on the seasons?
Well, now if you go back to the classification, the Ghaili type is the most sensitive to the fluctuation in the groundwater or the ground water level because it is taking its water from a shallow source of water. So that is not deep in the ground. So that is one, yes, so that one maybe you can find it in winter, have more flow, and in summer maybe less flow because of the evaporation. And of course, sometimes this type will dry up if there is no rain for several years. However, the Iddi or Dawoodi and the other one also the Aini, they are most stable and they are not that much fluctuated seasonally because they get their water from deeper aquifer or deeper sources of water.
So since we've talked about the conflicts now, what are the problems that Falaj, might encounter? Is the water supply continuous the whole year, or do you encounter like problems in terms of the source of water?
Yeah, I think the most biggest problem for the Aflaj is culture and is human source. I mean, I can say it's based on human being activities, not on nature mainly. Of course, there is a problem of the dryness of this Aflaj, but this dryness of the Aflaj because of the activity of people. I mean, when you dig up more wells and then you pump out the groundwater by modern wells using electrical pumps, which can pump 100 liters per second, and then it can be deepened in more than 100 or 200 meters below soil surface, where the Aflaj, they take their source just between 10 to 60 meters below. So then if you extend your well beyond and below the source of the Falaj, you are drying the Aflaj. So I mean, this is the main threat for the Aflaj as a water source. However, there are a lot of other threats for the Aflaj. If you talk about the Falaj as irrigation system, if you talk about the Falaj as agriculture system, or if you consider the Falaj as part of our heritage and culture. And the other threat, in fact, it is even more important and more difficult to solve.
People should be aware of that, how to maintain and sustain the Falaj. And also here's the thing, like how can you share some tips on how to, maintain and take care of the Falaj? What can we do to take care of it?
I think now the problem is that the perspective of people, how they see the Falaj now is much changed than the past, unfortunately. And in the past, the Falaj was the source of life. So it was maintained because they have no other option. They maintain their Falaj or they will not survive. So it is survival mode. And now the Falaj become less important, unfortunately, for survival. So I think we need whoever, researcher, it is the responsibility of everyone. Governmental agents, private sector, and people, even all people are responsible to protect Aflaj. So the main thing or the most important thing we need to do is to raise awareness with people and to preserve the culture behind that, to introduce the knowledge about Aflaj in our curriculum, in high school curriculum and below high school, and then let's say in university level, college level, and then in graduate and after graduate level also. So for PhD and even postdoc levels. So we need to introduce all this and include people. Let our student and our people involved with this culture, then they will not forget it. So if we not use it, we will lose it. And the English term always, that's use it or lose it. So we need to use this culture. So by introduce it, to in our education system and research.
And we've just spoken with Dr. Abdullah, who just gave us a powerful message to protect the Aflaj in the country, for everybody of all ages to raise awareness. With that, we ended today's episode. I hope you discovered the beginning of foliage in the country, its types and sources. Next week, we'll know more about the foliage as we continue Omani Varieties.
This show is presented to you by Sweetsil Navarro and produced by Sultan Al-Isa. Omani Varieties, a program that features Oman's story and the story of its people. Insight into the country's customs and tradition, a glimpse of history and heritage. It is Omani Varieties. This show is presented to you by Sweetsil Navarro and produced by Sultan Al-Isa.
Welcome to Omani Varieties. Last week we have discovered how does a foliage work. Its discovery. The different types of foliage that were built to suit the water sources available. The Dawoodi foliage, which are the long channels dug underground that run for several kilometers. Their depth usually reaches up to tens of meters, so water is present in these channels all year round. Next is the Gailey foliage. This foliage receives their water from ponds or running water. Water quantities increase in this foliage directly after rainfall and usually dry up quickly during extended dry periods. And the Aini foliage. This foliage draw their water directly from the springs. The importance of this foliage depends on their water quality, which varies between hot and cold, and between fresh drinking water, saline water, and between alkaline water mixed with valley water, considered suitable for agriculture. In our today's program, we'll continue digging up more facts about the foliage with our guest. Still, we have Dr. Abdullah Al-Ghafri. Among these types of foliage, what is the most used type of foliage in the country?
I think probably the Iddi type is the most one used, Dawoodi, because the Iddi type or Dawoodi has high flow rate, and it is because it is human-made system, so it is in fact they invest money and they invest time to get this water, and it can be extended in underground, so it is more stable and usually have higher, as I said, higher flow rate, so it also has higher people to use it, or higher, I can say, the water use community, and the land use also have more areas. So this is the Iddi type or Dawoodi have the most usable in these three types.
Construction and distribution of Aflaj exploration is the first step in finding water. How is the construction done, and how was it sustained from the old days until now?
The construction for the village of the Iddi village back in the past is just they use simple tools to dig inside, dig trenches and dig tunnels inside the soil. And the main tool was a chisel, a very strong chisel, and then a heavy hammer called bitk, which is maybe weight more than 1 kilogram. So they just drill the earth using this hammer and the chisel, but also there are other simple tools and some simple methods used sometimes to break down the rocks. For example, they use physical process, heating. So, for example, they make a big heat for a rock, and then suddenly they just squinch it with the water. So that means that it is like reducing the temperature of this rock from high temperature, drop to low temperature immediately, so it break down. Sometimes they use garlic syrup, so they just use the garlic syrup because it has some chemicals, and also it can work and act to break down some part of rocks. So these are the tools, and then of course they have some other tools to maintain, for example, the slope, which is most important, because the slope should be maintained not too sharp, so that means the water will erode the canal, and not too shallow or small, so that water will not run anyway. And then, of course, they have a tradition in every village, something called Shahab al-Falaj in Arabic. And Shahab al-Falaj is a tradition that is people will go to clean all the tunnel and the canal periodically, every 3 months, or every 2 months, or every 6 months. It is case by case, depending on the situation of that village and the circumstances, the type of soil.
It must be clean.
Yes, it should be cleaned periodically. Otherwise, the roots of trees will clog the water, and then also the sediments will stop the water from running. So the canal can be just stopped.
So how is water distributed from Aflaj, and what is the concept of water distribution?
Oh, well, depending on the size of the village and depending also on the history of a village, the concept of water distribution is quite similar. However, the details is completely different. If we are saying we have more than 4,000 Aflaj in Oman, or more than 3,000 running, that means we have more than 3,000 ways of water distribution. It is case by case. As I said, the concept is very similar, but there are a lot of details you can find. The main concept is to divide water according to the time. Water is running in the village always. You will not stop it because it's running by gravity. Yeah. So then the people who share the water shares, they divide themselves to irrigate in certain time, one after each other. The first or most important thing to decide is the irrigation rotation, which is called Dawaran. So let's say they decide the irrigation rotation. It will be usually between 7 to 14 days. It can be less, it can be more, depending on several circumstances. Well, after they decided the Dawaran, then it is divided 2 days. Because Dawaran, it can be like a week or 2 weeks, as I said, or 3 weeks, depending on the case by case. So then divide themselves who will irrigate in each day. So that means there will be a rotation. So in each day, there will be some people irrigating. The next day, other people irrigating, and so on. Then this rotation will be repeated again after time. This system, in fact, is so complex depending on how many shareholders you have in that system. If you are talking about a system which has a flow, something like more than 500 sometimes liter per second or 1,000 liter per second, speaking about Felix, for example, you have hundreds of shareholders. They are so precise to divide the time between themselves. So they divide the day to something called Athar. That is, Athar is approximately 30 minutes. In theory, it's 30 minutes, but practically it's different. So then each one of them will have Athar or 2 Athar or 3 Athar. Say, we have, let's say, 10 days, for example, at Oran. Each day is 48 Athar. That means they have like 480 Athars. Then they divide the Athar itself again to a smaller unit called Qiyas. Then they divided the Qiyas to a smaller unit. And they keep dividing these small units. Some units are not practical. There are some small units, for example, in Felix, which is 5/1000 second. It's non-measurable practically. So you see how precise is the water distribution system in the Aflaj.
Water is mainly distributed to the contributors or the owners, and their share is inherited, while others may buy a share from the owners or through rental from regular auctions according to the farmer's need of the water. There are several methods for distributing the water between shareholders. And how do they verify this Athar? How can they check the length of Athar?
In daytime, they use sundial, and at nighttime, they use the cylindrical body or the stars in the sky, the movement, the stars, yes, and the movement of the sun to timing the irrigation at night. So, for example, in daytime, they have a sundial, which is a stick fixed on flat land. Then they use the shadow of that stick on that flat land, and then make marks on the land. So you know that when the sun moving from sunrise to sunset, the shadow length is changed. According to this change of the length, then they can time the irrigation. And at night, they use specific stars, and the group of stars quite different from a village to another. And they know when a star, let's say star A is rising, and then between star A and star B, let's say we have like 2 ethers or 2 of this unit of water distribution or water ownership. Then from star B to star C, let's say we have another. So then they time the irrigation according to the rise up of this group of stars. And they know them very well, and they know where these stars come from, how they rise up, from which place they rise up, the color of the stars, the shape of these stars, and the relative distance between them, so someone who see it. So according to that, they make a system at night, so they know that they can time, okay, let's say someone will irrigate from star C to star D, or someone irrigate from star A to star B, and so on. So they know it. Then also have a device, a timing device, which is called TASA. And TASA is a water clock. It's a simple device that is a container which has a container which is filled with water, and has another container smaller of it is put in the top. So then it has a hole, and then the smaller container will sink in the bigger container by time according to its weight. So because of this, you will have like a constant time almost every time you put the smaller TASA or a smaller container on the bigger one. And sometimes this TASA is marked inside for time units. Then they can time. Even now, in these cases, or the village which use TASA, they can make timing without even using the stars or without using the sunlight and shadow.
Water distribution is fairly complicated but rather efficient to ensure fair and adequate water supply for all farming lands. The irrigation timing in the past was based on sun clock in the daytime and the stars in the night. You're listening to Omani Varieties. There's more, so don't go away. Omani Varieties, a program that highlights some untold stories that may be handed down from generation to generation. New discoveries from the old days that may influence the way we live in the present day. Omani Varieties, on your nation station, Radio Sultanate of Oman. Aflaj are utilized in agriculture as well as for domestic use since ancient times. Omani people used to rely on this type of agriculture system in the old primitive life. So, Dr. Abdullah, can you tell us the land use of Aflaj?
The land, in fact, is divided to areas very smartly. So when you irrigate from the village, they irrigate first the permanent crops, and mainly date palm. And then after the irrigation of the permanent crops, they irrigate seasonal crops. For example, like to some extent alfalfa, let's say wheat, sorghum, vegetables. Then they have sometimes even extended area in the village for crops that can be grown when we have enough flow in the village, more flow. So the land use is very flexible, designed to accommodate the fluctuation in the flow rate. So it's a smart system. So when you have more water, they extend the area of irrigation. When they have less flow, they shrink the area of irrigation. This is why they put, and maybe you ask the question why they put the permanent crops in the first, because that's the most important economically. Because date palm is a perennial crop. It can stay for more than 60 years. But you can give up, for example, an onion or like, let's say, a crop in the field, like wheat or something. But you don't want to give up a date palm. You grow it for 50 years, for example, which we're doing everything. So they put them in the first. So what kind of crops irrigated in Aflaj or cropped in the Aflaj? In the permanent crop area, you have many date palm, but you have also other fruits. You have mango. You have pomegranate, for example. You have citrons, different type of citrons, for example, and different other types of fruit, even papaya and banana. And someone may surprise how we can grow banana and papaya, which is a tropical fruit, sometimes in the middle of the desert. This is a clever also system in the land use. The date palm, under their canopy, they create a microclimate, which looks just like tropic and subtropic climate. Because the date palm is tall, under the date palm we have a shade, so the temperature under the canopy of date palm will be less than outside. And because of the photosynthesis or the evapotranspiration come from the date palm, you have more vapor of water under the date palm canopy. So you have more humidity. So you have less temperature, you have more humidity, you don't have that much wind, dry wind, because the date palm will cover it, and you have less direct sunlight. The land under date palm is the paradise for banana. So you are creating now for banana a subtropic or tropic climate, in fact. So you see how smart is the land used in the Aflaj system.
The people of Oman adopted the old traditional engineering pattern in irrigation and are the first to work in organizing these tables or Aflaj depending on their experience in the ground and high skills in agriculture during the first millennium BC. Another pride of the country is when UNESCO's World Heritage Committee formally took a decision to inscribe Oman's 5 Aflaj to the World Heritage List. So what are those Aflaj listed in UNESCO?
Yeah, in 2006, likely we are very happy and that we have 5 Aflaj have been listed in the World Heritage List. And Faleg Daris in Nizwa, Faleg Al-Khatmin also in Nizwa, Faleg Al-Muyassar in Wilayat Al-Rustaq, Faleg Al-Malki, sometimes they call it Al-Malki, in Wilayat Izki, and Faleg Al-Jela in Wilayat Sur.
So I think those are the most popular Aflaj in the country.
Now become popular and become more popular.
Is Aflaj only in Oman, or is it present in other countries as well?
Aflaj, in fact, it found almost in all continent around the world except Australia, from Japan to the United States and Latin Americas, with different names. In Japan, it's called mambo. In China, it's there. It's called karis, karanjing, and in Korea, manambu. In Central Asia, it's called karis also, like Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, etc. In Afghanistan also. And Iran is called qanat. In the Arabian Peninsula, all the Arabian Peninsula, it's there. In Oman, and of course in Oman and Yemen, UAE, and all even North Arabia, it exists and existed in the past. And in North Africa, like in Algeria, called Fugara, in Morocco called Qattara. In South Europe, like in Italy, called Angrotato. In Spain, it's called Saqiya, and called Mayrit and Magrit. And in Latin America, called Galarius, and also Saqiya in some places, and Pucyu. So you can see that it is scattered or diffused. In fact, it's diffused all around the world.
It was way back, thousands of years ago.
Yes. However, the Aflaj which is in Oman, they are more rich in culture, what I found, and they are more, I can say, is mature in the way of water distribution, comparing with the other countries.
How it differs from other water irrigation systems?
For the structure, they are mostly very similar. However, they are different in this maturity of the society of water, of the way of water, the institution, or what I can say, the village institution, how they distribute the water between them, and this is how they divide the land and how it's used. So here is more mature, in fact. The legal system behind it. For example, in Oman, in the water distribution, they put like a day of the Dawaran I mentioned before, and that day is not for anyone. That is for the village itself. That's mean they rent it every week, sometimes every month. Yes, and so that water is rented for someone. If you want water, you buy it. Not for you have your own water, but if you want extra water, you buy it from that day. This fund generated from selling that day every week, then used for the maintenance of the village. I didn't find that, for example, in Algeria or in Morocco when I was there, for example. So, and also I didn't find it myself in Iran when I went there. So that means the village was independent by its fund in the past. So it can maintain itself even financially. This why this system is already collapsed in many parts of around the world. So in most of the countries I mentioned, in fact there are about 50 countries around the world we have Aflaj. Most of them is already finished, dried up. They are only part of history. Except few countries still this system are survived. And Oman, one of the Aflaj, by percentage, we are one of the best country in the world, if not the best, which still, fortunately, have more than 50% of the Aflaj still survived.
So as a person who has this expertise in the field, we really want to know from you what is the cultural importance of Aflaj in the society.
Aflaj is part of our history, for long history, and part of our culture. It's come in, it is the basic of life in every village, in fact. So the village is the center, at the heart of the oasis. So all the activities in the oasis is connected with the village. So in the past, the behavior even of people is go around the village. If I just talk about that, let's say the space in the past, how the people tell news. They tell news, or they know the news of it because they meet it with each other around the water source, either to collect water for drinking or for pollution, or for bathing, for example, or for washing their clothes for ladies, for example, or washing dishes. Other thing, even there are some words even in our dialect is came from the process of agriculture that's in the village. There are also other culture thing that they are precise way of water distribution and land distribution, and there is also a lot of experience of what we can say a water law, how the people get their water on the right time with the right amount without conflict, and for long history. So there are a lot of tradition, there are a lot of heritage, in fact, and culture behind water usage and the water coming from the Aflaj.
Well, Dr. Abdullah, it has been a pleasure to reminisce with you today the Aflaj in the country, its beginnings, and the role it played in people's lives. Thank you for being a guest today.
Thank you for this opportunity to talk about Aflaj.
The Aflaj is a unique and important water source that has contributed greatly to the Omani society throughout its history. Not only is it regarded as one of the most historical sites in Oman, but it represents the ability of Omanis to build civilizations in the face of severe challenges and at the same time enrich the world's heritage through their intellectual and creative endeavors. With that, we bring you to the end of the program. I hope you join us again next week and discover more about Oman.
This show is presented to you by Sweet Navarro and produced by Sultan Al-Aisa.